Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the virtual breakfast sessions. My name is Larry Sashin. We have a wonderful show for you today. And before we go into it, I'd like to introduce our panel. Fred, why don't you start today?
Yes, good morning. I'm Fred Clashman. I'm the editor and publisher of Total Food Service. Thrilled to spend an hour with you and look forward to learning.
Okay. Phil.
Hey, everybody. Phil Frederick. I am CEO of Acronym Investment and Hemp Sourcer.
All right. Diana.
Hi, I'm Diana DeLucia, founder of Golf Kitchen Magazine.
All right. Bob.
Bob Heiss, Sonora Sales Development Consulting Services.
Okay. Well, as I said, we have a wonderful show today. This is a show that should hit home to just about everybody in the business environment.
You heard?
We all have our plans for our businesses, but really, what is your exit strategy? Now, with some people, your exit is total. You want to retire, you want to get out, but with other people, certain events or situations arise where you may want to switch jobs, you may want to relieve yourself of some of the duties that you do so it can free you up to do things you really enjoy. So Bob, why don't you start this and just give a description to people what an exit strategy is.
Well, an exit strategy is theoretically your planned exit from the business. They define something with the same word, but it is really transitioning out of the business. Now, the biggest challenge is that most of us that are entrepreneurs that have started businesses are ill-equipped to, well, an awful lot don't even think about the exit. They're just trying to do the everyday business, get it up on its feet, make it cash positive, make a good living, and our planning quite typically doesn't go past that. So an awful lot of people, particularly younger people, just don't think about a plan. They don't plan at all. And that is probably the biggest challenge, because when you are hit with that sudden desire to retire, to move on to another industry, you don't like what you're doing anymore, or there's a chance to merge or acquire somebody, there's no plan to fit that into. And that is probably the biggest struggle that people have. There just is no plan.
Okay. Now, Diana, you just made a very big move with your company, but long before that move in our conversations, you always were talking about, there was always a grumbling about that you had to do this and I had to do that, and I hate doing this. How did you get rid of your hates and had to do's and make your business much stronger?
Asking for help. I think I went for so long being so independent and needing to have that control of the business that I started, 13 years ago by myself. So, and then, I had a lot of support with the clubs and the industry itself and the owners and everything like that. But, the onus is on me to produce everything that, my ambitions were doing, because I was able to just come up with an idea and ask, hey, how do we pull this off? And then if it went well, it went well, and we kept doing it. So I got to, like, for me, the money side of business is not my passion. It's the doing part. I'm a photographer, I'm a writer, I would travel, I like producing books. So for me, the business side is not my passion, and that was always like bogging me down. So 2022 came, 2020 and 2021 were pretty good. Then, because the golf industry is booming, so everything I was doing right, and people needed it and enjoyed it. It gave everybody, it gave the chefs and the culinary side, they had something to focus on. They had some more notoriety, which they don't often get. And then, it continued to grow. But then 2022, with that Omicron I just like, then the war started, you know, everything just fell apart with events because I was planning a pro-am and then that just got tabled. And I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore. And I just went, I need help. I need to ask for help. It was going to be the help or it was going to be gone. And then I started speaking to people, and then some people reached out to me. One of them fell through because they didn't feel they had the skills to do it, even though they wanted to do it. And then I teamed up with Karen Morgan from Hunter Public Relations, and Chris Bartlett, who's an entrepreneur, and he has his own advertising agency, Gem Advertising, and Gary Doyens, who's a media guy. So they do all the operations now, and I just go and write stories and produce events.
Wow. That makes it easy. That makes your life a whole much easier and more efficient. Phil, let's talk about your transition from here to there.
Sure. I have a completely different arc, I think. I spent 20 years in the culinary industry. I worked in French and Spanish cuisine, doing a lot of high-end stuff, high volume. And then I was working for the Landry's organization, McCormick and Schmick's, when COVID came around. And like so many restaurant organizations out there were a lot of cutbacks. Essentially, I found by June of 2020 that they were putting us down to limited pay, and the restaurants had shut down. Most of the projects that I was undertaking had been kind of also shut down, and sort of pending what's going to happen next. Are we going to re-enter this stuff? So I was at home, essentially just kind of doing nothing, like so many other people were during COVID, trying to figure out what next steps were. And it's not really kind of my personality. I tend to kind of be grab the bull by the horns sort of person. So I started a little consulting company on my own. I was considering going into actually purchasing a number of food trucks and starting an organization there. Instead, I was hired by a cannabis edibles company to come in and do some sort of some R&D with them. It went well. I started to help with some sales as well, and within a year's time frame, they had offered for me to become the operations officer. Since we've expanded quite a bit, and this year I was made the CEO of that company. So I transitioned out of culinary arts all the way into being the CEO of an organization that specializes mostly in sales, cannabis networking, and consultation.
All right, so we have something in common here. Bob, can you explain, like with Peter Herrero, how you helped him organize for his transition? How do you help someone organize, the step-by-step process on organizing someone to do an organized transition, whether it be from removing duties, switching from one job to another, or leaving completely?
Well, that's a complex question. I think in the case of Peter Herrero and a number of companies, one of the key questions is what is their role and what would they like their role to be going forward? Quite often, Diana was just talking about it. Quite often, we see people in actual operations. They're doing everything in the business. They are just get their hands in everything, and they ask about exit plans or exit strategies, and they're completely baffled because one of their chief questions is, how does the organization continue? How do I get value out of it? When I'm doing everything, there's nobody there to replace me. There's nobody there to continue the business activities, to either pay me out or allow me to step back and be more of a figurehead and so forth. So one of the first things you got to figure out is what is your role going to be going forward? And by the way, that role can be just not being involved with the business at all, either selling out or being an advisor or getting paid out over 5 years. So what is your role going to be, and who's going to run the business? Can they run that business with the same amount of value that you've been doing it? That's a big question, because a lot of us have built businesses where it's revolves around you, and that is not sustainable. So that's the first thing, is what is your role? And then, of course, coming after that is, what do you want to do going forward? And those are the two biggest questions to answer before you start any planning at all. And in some businesses, it's a lot harder to sell or transition if it's a person. Well, an example, if it's a personality-based business. In other words, people are buying from you or doing business with you because of you. Then it is awful hard to have a good exit strategy. The more you can step back and let things happen, the easier the exit strategy becomes. There's an old measurement, and this is kind of anecdotal, but if you're in a position with your business that you can step away and let it run itself for a month, then you're in good shape to transition out of that business. If you have to be there every day, you've got some issues to fix before you can take any action at all.
So how do you fix that, Bob?
Well, I'm thinking of two companies in particular. Let's take a catering company, or a business, Peter Herrero's business, about 4 catering companies and a restaurant. Peter was doing everything in the business, had his hands into every aspect of the operation. He had to go out and hire a manager or a leader for each one of those divisions. A chef, somebody to head all of the catering companies, not one catering company, but all of the catering companies, somebody to handle in the operations, somebody to handle sales. So he lined himself up with 3 division leaders, and gradually gave them more and more responsibility, to the point that they are running their own division, coordinated, but essentially without him. His role that he wanted to be in and gradually withdraw from the business was that of a front man, somebody that went to the big business meetings, a lunch and dinner person is what I would call him, taking influential people out to lunch and dinner, and helping them, just being visible in the community, being attached to a lot of community services. The guy's got a good rap and a good presence, and he's connected everywhere. That's where he wanted to be. So he gradually withdrew from the business and became that person. So if you are stuck where you are doing everything, you've got to get people to do it as well or better than you are, and have them be your right-hand person, or your manager, or whatever you want to call it. So that is, I think, besides knowing what you want to do, that is job number 1, is be in a position where the business won't run without you, because there is no exit if it's going to be, if the business falls apart when you're not there.
Okay. So Phil, so you've exited one type of food service business into another type. I know you do the cannabis catering and more things, but do you have an exit strategy right now, or have you planned an exit strategy for either you, your company, in whole? Are you looking to build and sell, or are you looking to build, stay, and have someone else run the company?
Now, personally, I'm not. There's 2 parts that I can go into on this. One, I have a very essential employee, somebody who's, like you say, someone who's almost irreplaceable. They have their hands in all kinds of different areas that we're working in right now, and they need to exit. They've got some personal things they need to go and take care of. So just like he said, what we've done, the first task that I assigned, when we were given proper notice that this person was leaving, is I want you to go over your job description and make sure it's all accurate. Have we really defined what you do completely, or do we need to further define it? Go into your responsibilities a little further and help us with training materials, so that we know every pitfall that you might have. So we spent almost 2 weeks with this person, really analyzing their position, really analyzing our perception of what they do and what they really do, how those things coincide, and how we're going to replace that. Now, as far as our company, well, of course, we're, we'd love to sell the entire company and make a gigantic profit, but we'd also like it to be healthy, in the future. I don't want to turn over anything to someone else one day that isn't going to be a good enterprise. So yes, the idea of selling and moving into other things is out there, but before we can do that, I think it's a fallacy that a lot of sort of tech companies get into is they build to sell. I think we're building for sustainability, and then through that sustainability, we have a saleable product.
Can I add something to that, Phil? You touched on something I think is very important, and that is, I'm going to use different words, but the more of your business that you can systemize, in other words, that irreplaceable employee going through the job description and documenting everything that they do is good. The businesses that sell for the most money and are the most sustainable and the most valuable are systems that have systemized. They almost have checklists for everything. You can almost take somebody off the street, drop them in there and say, just check the boxes as you go through this. I'm simplifying that, of course, but that is pretty critical, and that's a good start to transitioning from doing everything yourself to having other people do it.
Also, Phil touched on something else that I find is a pitfall for almost every small to medium-sized business. Defined roles. People are hired to do a job, but because it's a small company, they end up migrating to other areas. And sort of like Diana, who has a focus that she loves doing and was forced to do 40 other things. There are no defined rules. I mean, when was the last time that anyone out there owning a business really did and worked out job descriptions? When they need to hire somebody, they look for one task that they're going to hire them for, but that's not really the job. You need somebody who also does this, and this. So, Diana, when you decided to look for partners, someone to partner with you, you defined, as opposed to defining their role, you defined yours.
Yeah, I did, because I always knew what I wanted to do. So I just went, okay, I need advertising sales, I need public relations, and I need media. So they were the three partners. And they, there was a lot of paperwork, a lot of legal work, a lot of lawyers involved. We had a lot of agreements to make, but all the roles are very clearly defined. And we're coming out with our first new rebranded publication, probably in fact, the cover's ready on Friday. So I'm really excited. They've got it's going back to quarterly. The awards is developing really nicely. I've got sponsorship development. We've got some really great sponsors coming on board and underwriters, and these are things that I struggled with completely, because I'm more of the art side than, I come up with ideas and I can make them happen, but you've got to continue them and you need the right people to help you grow them,
Thank you.
It got so big for me that I was just freaking out, to be honest.
Yep. And every business owner has been there at least once a day. I mean, it is a hard thing. Bob, how often should a company look over the job descriptions in a restaurant, from greeter to dishwasher? How often should they look over and reevaluate their job descriptions? Because it's so important to understand what you have and what you need.
I think of it as the job description is a living document. one that's not just settled on, but is constantly being reevaluated. And I think that reevaluation has to do with three things. I think it's the market conditions and what's happening in the business itself. I think it's the it's tied somehow to personal reviews and what the person is good at and not good at, and those tasks that need to be done. Can it be done by that person, or how efficiently can it be done, or should it be done by other people? And I think it has to do also with just the company's actual delivery capabilities, operational capabilities. A job description, I don't think in most of the companies that we see that you're all in, I think there's dynamics in those companies that change quickly. And one of the beauties of being in a smaller company is you can change direction on a dime, really fast. And that's how job descriptions have to change also. Now, I guess sometimes that's going to make people a little bit uncomfortable, but I guess it is what it is also.
Yeah, and especially if you're looking to bring in a partner or want to sell or want to retire, whatever it is. How do you describe your company if you can't describe your employees? The building blocks of the company. It's sort of like laying a foundation for everything else. Plus, how do you get people to work if they don't know what you expect of them? If that changes day to day, if there's a job description, you have something to build off of. Phil, in your working with companies, what is your role in helping those companies grow and work?
So let's break this down into, because we have a couple of different divisions that are under our umbrella in this, but let's go into cannabis trade and what we do there. So we work internationally as sort of a B2B connection agency, where if you're in business and you need a product, we're going to try and find somebody who has the thing that you need. So our role in interacting with these companies is building out largely new avenues of sales for them. A lot of people are coming to me right now because we work internationally in what is very much a burgeoning, but also very new cannabis market in the international world. North America is largely ahead of the rest of the world as far as the development of the market itself. So basically, we're in a spot in the United States where intellectual properties, you would say, basically our expertise as American cannabis entrepreneurs is valuable on the world stage. But a lot of these American companies don't necessarily understand how to apply that. So what we're doing is oftentimes finding opportunities for them in Europe, South America, or Asia to bring products that are now becoming legal, becoming saleable into a market where most of the competition is still figuring out how to do what they need to do, whereas they can come in with full expertise and SOPs, all the organizational skills that they need to, and really gain a strong foothold in a new market. Whereas here in the United States, it's extraordinarily competitive, and it's difficult to really get any huge piece of the market itself. In say a European market, an American company can go in and really kind of take things by storm. So
Okay.
That's what we're doing, is facilitating.
I'd like to draw someone in from the audience right now. And Art, you are unmuted. Art and I have known each other from the early 80s, and we used to travel the Northeast as wholesalers of tax shelters. And Art, in the middle of the 80s, our job changed drastically with tax laws, and you've done nothing but adapt all these years. What is your planning when you're moving from oil and gas to now cannabis? How does that happen?
Oh, I search out the best experts in the area and plumb them as hard as I can for answers and solutions. So, we always drew those boxes where we had to lay out our goals and lay out our objectives. And over the years, I've just built the expertise to tap into people that I respect in different areas and go to them and seek solutions and answers. It's easy as entrepreneurs to go over the missteps that we often make. We're often undercapitalized. We're often trying to run the business from top to bottom. We often scare away very good employees because we put too many burdens on them too rapidly. So it's really finding out the best possible source of information. As you and I have always done, we've never had any fear of going to the top, the best person in the industry, to find out how they did it. And that's basically what I do when I'm building a new area. We're learning about EB-5 financing right now for different companies. So what do? You go to the top immigration attorneys and you go right to the federal government to find out answers to your questions. So I seek out experts.
So you should seek out Phil.
I will seek out, yeah, we'll definitely reach out to Phil for our little cannabis company. No doubt about it.
Yes,
I've already
yes.
written that down.
Okay. All right. So, you know, whether we plan it or stumble into it, or, you know, come with the idea while we're pulling our hair out, what it all goes back to is planning, whether your plans, you know, and not just planning once, it's planning constantly. Bob, what are the steps that what is step 1 through 5 or 1 through 3 that every business owner or or practitioner, independent contractor should be doing right now to plan their merger, change, exit?
Well, I think the most basic thing is have a company plan first. In other words, a regular business plan for a year, 3 years, and 5 years. Aside from your involvement in it, just have a business plan. You'd be surprised at how many companies don't have a plan for this year, 3 years from now, and 5 years from now. The business they'll be doing, the markets they'll be in, the products they'll be selling, how they're going to service people, what their projected revenues are, what their projected profit is. So unless you have a good solid plan, anything else you do is basically just wish.
Can I break in for 1 second, Bob?
Yeah.
And when we're talking about a plan, what is a plan that's in your head?
Plan
no-
in your head.
It's no plan.
It's a wish.
It's no plan. It's no plan.
Reminds
You
me of a
must
book.
write it down.
There was a book several years ago. Gosh, I think I have the name. God reviewed your business plan and he's laughing. Or God laughed at your business plan or something like that. It's pretty good book. Anyway, yeah, you're right. It's you have to have a real official plan for the business. Secondly, you need to know what, as I said earlier, you need to know what your role will be and how it will evolve through that 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year period. The third thing is what personnel will be fulfilling parts of that plan. So those are the 3 basic things you need to figure out before you even start to think about your exit plan. Along with that, or running parallel to that, would be your life plan. What do you personally want to be doing a year from now, 3 years from now, and 5 years from now? Many of us forget that and just say stuff like, I want to retire. I want to fish. I want to hike, whatever they want to do. But it's just, again, a wish list. So you need to have a personal plan where you want to be, what you want to do. So those are the prerequisites to even starting to run and put together an exit strategy or an exit plan or a transition to what you want to do next. So I don't know if that answers your question. But
Yeah, it does.
I think those are essential elements of anything.
Now we're going to go back to something else here. When you need your living room painted, you hire a painter. When you have a toothache, you go to the dentist. And when you have problems with your business, you call your Uncle Steve. What's wrong with that? Why do we do things like this, where one of the most important things in your life, we plan with friends? What is the importance of, I mean, Phil, did you reach out to people who are professionals in this when you decided to do a transition? Diana, Art, you know, who do you reach out to? Art just said it right there. He said you go to the right to the top, the people who know. Who are the people you know? Not Uncle Steve. Give me some answers here.
Well, I did speak to a lot of industry people, and I spoke to, you know, my mentors in the industry, and they're all golf club owners or bank owners or whatever. And they'd always been supportive, and they've always been supportive of who I might partner with, and would that be the right partners, and what benefit would it be ongoing for the brand and the awards, which is an industry event. So you kind of have all this responsibility of all these properties that have been helping you all over the world, and you've got to keep this brand going and the events continuing to develop. So, you know, at the beginning I was terrified to even ask for help, and then I just was like, I just need to just do it. And now I feel so much better about it. I mean, it took me a while to get over the control thing, but you know, now I kind of can sit back and do what I'm good at. And now I'm resurrecting my photography career, and I have whole visions with that, which is kind of crazy, but I enjoy doing that. So for me, I feel much calmer. I feel more confident that the business is going to continue to develop and grow, and I've got a great team, and more people are getting involved all the time. You know, we've got some underwriters now, which I never had before. You know, I was a chief underwriter. So
Yep.
now it's all different.
Right. Art, when you and I get these notices from companies that they have great ideas, how do you organize them from a mom and pop business, a great idea, into a company?
Well, usually we sit down with them and begin to write their business plan. Usually, as you described, a lot of these companies just have everything conceptualized between friends and family, and a little bit written down here and there, but quite often we sit them down and we get a good CPA involved. Occasionally we get an attorney and start writing the prospectus. It filters out all their ideas. It begins to focus them on what's important. It helps us quantify everything. And as you know, we're sticklers for numbers. So we always try to get their chief financial officer involved. And if that's Uncle Louis, then we try to bring in somebody to augment Uncle Louis's bookkeeping and QuickBooks entries. But it's all organization and being able to see where the numbers really lie and what the market is, and help them really define themselves in relationship to their competitors. Yeah, when we do a typical offering, I mean, we operate on a scale that if the client isn't looking for at least $10 million, then we kind of refer them somewhere else. But we try to filter them out. We go through the due diligence process. We try to give them their team. We have a team of outside third-party auditors, rental CFOs. As you know, we work with some of the biggest law firms in New York. And we just try to filter it down and make sure that they're ready for prime time. Depending on the amount of capital that they want to raise, sometimes we're cost prohibitive. So we lay out the entire path for them, seeing where they are, where their current cash flow is, what they hope to do over the next 3 to 5 years, and make sure that they're capable of doing that.
Okay.
Sometimes they're just not ready for prime time. They're great little businesses, but they're just not ready to do what you and I have always needed them to do. Okay,
so let's talk about 90% of the businesses out there that are great little businesses. What Art just said rings true on a smaller scale with mom and pop. Yeah. Mom and pop, sometimes all their planning is done over dinner. is done over dinner. They have no plan besides this is what we do, this is what we have to order, and this is what we need to sell to make it happen. If you're going to grow any bigger than that, what is the first step you would recommend to this kind of company, Phil?
I think we're talking about is scaling. So I think what probably the first step you would need to do, I mean, you have to find out if things are viable, right? So I would probably analyze the market and see what kind of capital is flowing in that market. You know, if you are going to need $8 million in cash flow on a yearly basis to be, you know, solvent, you know, and the business that you have access to only comes up to about, you know, $5 million of actual opportunity. Obviously there's a gap and you're not going to be able to make it function. You need to rethink your strategy. So I would definitely analyze the market before anything else and see, you know, is there really this opportunity that you think is there, before you go into it too hard. Also, that's also going to give you an idea of how much you're going to invest into it. And how large you're really going to be. Maybe if you need to be a $10 million company, but there's only $5 million of opportunity out there, you need to be half as big as what you initially thought. So you really need to understand the market that you're entering into before you can really develop a business plan, I think.
You know, it's interesting. Anybody that watches Shark Tank has learned what's the difference between a business and someone selling a product. And because they lay it out for you. Bob, can you tell people, you know, define what a business is as opposed to I go out and sell a product?
Well, it goes back to, I don't know if anybody ever read the E-Myth Revisited. It's a pretty good definition of what you're talking about, Larry. And the book talks about, if I remember this correctly, the book talks about a person that was really good at making cupcakes and just loved to bake and all of that. And then so they, upon encouragement by friends, they go ahead and open up a business and realize that it's way more than just baking and having a good product. They had to actually sell it. They had to have an operation that produced it. They had to have accountants and the means to take the revenue and produce profit. And then there was the question of what to do with the profit. There's so much more involved. And I think that that's what's left out of a lot of people's planning, and particularly when they start a business, but even when they get into business, we become very myopic, and therefore any kind of exit strategy, any kind of business growth for that matter, is handicapped by people not seeing the entire business, the entire opportunity, misreading it, as you were talking about, Phil, and not adjusting to the conditions. So there's a lot of issues, and people, I think it's almost like a horse with blinders. We just are doing what, or the mom and pop sitting at the table at night, just dealing with what's in front of us without that plan, without that vision, without that 50,000 foot altitude look at the market, the business, and so forth. Those are issues, and they have to be dealt with. And look, people can figure out how to do it themselves. They can and should go to consultants. They should, as Larry, as you, an artist, talking about, go to the best people in the industry to figure it out. Whatever problems or issues everybody's facing, they have been dealt with before. Other people have experienced it and worked their way through it. So the information on how to do it is out there. It's a matter of the desire to make it happen.
I think Diana brought out a great point. No one can make a seed grow into a business like an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur, they usually have the thought process, they have the drive, they have the mission, you know, they have the verb, they feel the business, they live the business, they grow the business. And then again, no one can kill the growth of a business like an entrepreneur who won't give up any control, because they take the business to a certain level and wonder why it stops. Bob, can you explain Peter Herrero is a great example. He's basically driven himself and his business to a certain level, and he hit a wall.
Well, yeah, so that's quite a common occurrence. If you look at entrepreneurial companies that are big in the tech business, and actually Peter's not that good of an example of it, but some of the strongest moves that companies can make is getting rid of the founder, taking the founder out of the CEO position and bringing in a professional. It's done all the time because, you know, we're handicapped by, companies are handicapped by everything we're talking about. They're just made there to make the cupcakes. They can only take the business so far until they bring in a professional to run it.
Yep. But Art, you and I ran into someone in the mining business that was just like that. He built up a name, he built up a brand, and then he killed the business by without naming names.
Right. And I mean, we worked with an oil and gas company. That was a great regional oil and gas company. Couldn't grow beyond that limit until we brought in an outside expert, Stanford MBA, who could take us to that next level. We all have to accept those limitations. The new chief executive officer isn't going to know every name of everyone in the field, but he will be able to take you to Wall Street. He will be able to define wider parameters. He'll have a different worldview than the niche that the entrepreneurial founder first established. Very important to see those limitations and see that the business can grow beyond that original niche. That's a difficult conversation we have with a lot of founders. We kind of outline that in the first business plan, that this is when the transition is going to begin. This is when we're going to hire the outside chief financial officer. This is when we're going to hire the outside chief executive officer. This is when we're going to bring you in help as the company grows. We try to adjust them to that fact very early on if it's that type of business, if it's that type of dynamic. It is a learning process.
You know, an interesting exercise, Art, in that is to ask somebody to write an org chart for their company, the perfect org chart. And if there are no people in those positions, just put their own name in that position. And once they complete that org chart and see where their name is, it freaks them out.
Good point. You're right.
Explain an org chart to the people who may not know what it is.
Well, an organizational chart that starts at the top with the founder/CEO, that branches down to operations, finance, marketing, sales, and HR, and branches down to who does all of the work underneath those functions. And if there are no people, then somebody's doing that function. Typically is the CEO or the founder. And once they realize they're running the entire business, they can quickly see the limitations that they have. And if they're thinking about selling the business, nobody's buying a business where the CEO is in every single organizational chart box. It's just not going to happen.
And you know, back to what Art said about bringing in people, the successor to your business that you work very, very hard to build is not necessarily your son and daughter or daughter.
Right.
How difficult, Bob, have you ever helped anybody past that or through that, or Art or Phil or anyone? How do you get them, you know?
I mean, I can tell you I've encountered it. Coming out of the restaurant industry, industry is full of nepotism, right? Think of it this way. I'm a wonderful 5-star chef out there. I know all these great things. I've won James Beers awards. Do I want to eventually retire and hand it over to some random dude, or do I want my son to take over it, or do I want my daughter to take over for it? And it's almost always the latter. Most people who started a restaurant want to pass it on to their kids. A lot of times those kids aren't suitable for that, and there tends to be issues because of it. I've seen a lot of people in restaurant organizations that are larger with great potential that have been passed over for someone's son or daughter or nephew or something like that. And I myself have done this where I've been in a situation where I felt like I was probably passed over for someone who's, in a position where they're, a relative or something like that. And I've moved on as a result of that. I found opportunities and said, hey, you know what? I don't feel like I can get through this ceiling that's above me of nepotism, and I'm going to go somewhere else as a result of it. It's a terrible thing, but it happens to be very true in culinary arts.
Okay. Okay. All right. So,
And by the way, Phil,
Good,
maybe I can add to that. Sometimes what drives people like you away is the complete ineptitude of the heir apparent. And sometimes it's also the person, the son, the relative, the nepotypic person is so good that they're threatening. So it can go either way.
yeah. Yeah. It's just because they have the same genes doesn't mean they have the same head. And you could have, you grow up in a business, the business, but if you're not a leader, you're not going to run the business. I mean, it's for a non-parent of someone that in a business, it's easy for us to see, but very hard, because truly our kids are the most wonderful people to us, and that's about it. So, we
That's questionable sometimes.
yes, question. Well, on a day-to-day basis, that might change. I understand that, Bob. So let's go around the room and discuss just a point. If you could think of one point that you might want to to leave with the people here, or first of all, I haven't asked the audience any questions. Okay, crickets. All right, so let's go around the room and give some kind of point that if you were talking to someone now who owns a business, what would you tell them to do to prepare for maybe what's next? Phil, why don't we start with you?
I think it's we've barely touched on it. Runway, I think, is a big thing. You run into it in restaurant industry, you run into every industry. Are you starting your business with enough runway? Do you have enough capital to really move into this? I know someone has mentioned this a little bit, but I wanted to talk about it. A lot of restaurants out there, they open up, they've got enough money to get to that day when they open, right? And then they expect to do the business that they need to be sustainable, but that's not necessarily the case. Restaurants largely will gain business, or catering companies and like that, through word of mouth. It takes time. You really need to deliver and then get that word of mouth out there and get more people in, and then have that snowball effect. So, if you're going to open a restaurant, I think you should have at least a year of what they call operating capital. It's, the ability to pay for all the equipment you need, all your overhead, staff, etc. In order to be successful, you have to be able to operate without profit for perhaps an extended period of time. This is going to be true in almost every business that's out there. So I think it's really important, if you're starting a business now, to have more capital than you probably think that you need, because there's going to be unforeseen circumstances and things aren't going to go as well as you want to. And hey, if they do go as well as you want to, fine, you've got this extra capital, you can pay it back to your investors, you can use it to expand. There's plenty that you can do with it, but don't start a business if you don't have the money to run that business.
Okay, that's an important point. I'm glad you brought it up. Okay, Diana.
I think it's really important to not put all your eggs in one product in the business. Like, you need to kind of diversify and not just have this one thing. And what I learned during the pandemic, because I do book design and magazine, and, we have awards and then a pro-am and an invitational, and, as many things as possible, that can branch off, that may work out and some may not. But, being able to pivot is like one of the biggest things that you really need to predict. We've all been through the pandemic, and things knock you down in life and things get in the way, and you've got to always go, okay, what do I do now to continue my business, and how can I come up with new ideas surrounding the brand that will suit the current climate. You know, that's the best way I can put that.
Okay. Thank you, Diana. Art.
I think one of the things that we always come across is that young companies need a good management team and a good board of directors and or board of advisors. Sometimes they can't get real board of director members on, but they can get advisors to the company, people in aligned industries that can help and advise them and coach them along the way. And I think it's very important because it helps build bridges, builds financing sources, and it opens up the founder, the entrepreneur, to a wider market and a lot of strong outside opinions. So whether it's your favorite attorney, your favorite CPA, your best friend running a big business, try to get them on your team and explain your game plan, because it expands the parameters of your business and opens the horizons and brings in fresh ideas. So you're not locked in a tight little closet of just your own people and ideas. The board of advisors, board of directors, greater exposure, greater markets, and kind of helps you in the succession plan. A good board of advisors or directors can sometimes keep nepotism to a minimum.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, Bob.
Art, I think that's brilliant. And it's a point that we should have brought up earlier in the call. Just brilliant. My thing is also, no matter what you do, no matter how unique you think your business is, somebody has done it before. Some people very successfully, some people not as successfully. There's a number of lessons to be learned from that, besides how to run the business, how to structure it, how to organize it. Also, exit strategies. The exit strategies for your particular kind of situation, your particular business, they exist. For instance, if you are a professional doctor, lawyer, doctor, dentist, that kind of thing, there's 2 or 3 exit strategies that those professional businesses have. There's the law firm structure and exit strategy, the partnership strategy, there's the ESOPs, there's any number of different strategies. They all exist. You have to find out what they are, not only for the exit strategy, but basically how to run your business in the first place. And to echo Art, I think a board of advisors is like a super key element in that.
Okay, one thing that we haven't touched on, and Bob, maybe you could help with us, or Art maybe, or what are the tools that a small business owner should use? I mean, we tell them to do a business plan. Some of them will now scratch their heads and go, okay, I thought I had a business plan. We open the doors, we make sure the shelves are full, and we sell stuff.
We have money left in the checkbook.
And we have money left in the checkbook. Our business plan works perfectly. Okay. So what are the tools that a small operator who doesn't have the money to bring in a team, or, you know, their people they speak to are no smarter than them. What can they use, Bob, to help them organize themselves to get to the next level?
Well, probably Google and YouTube are the most important tools. I think that certainly a good accounting program, QuickBooks, FreshBooks, there's any number of them out there. If they're in the sales business, then you're going to need some sort of CRM, customer relationship management program. There's a whole bunch of those. From my perspective, those are probably 2 of the most important tools that can be used. Now, every industry, by the way, has software written for them. I know in the restaurant industry, there's all kinds of software, point of service, everything. So
you're talking about writing a business plan, getting that first business plan together.
Yeah, Google Business Plan, and there's a gazillion softwares that are either online or you can download them and use them to write a business plan. They'll walk you right through it. It's incredible. Spreadsheets, you just fill in the numbers and so forth.
Yeah, and be hard on yourself. I mean, some people,
show it to somebody else. Let them be hard on you.
Yeah. I don't know if they still do it because I haven't interviewed in a long time, But one of the questions in every interview I went to, they said to me, where do you see yourself 1 year and 5 years from now? And that was something, a very important question to ask. And how many of our business owners still do that? How many people still ask those questions? Where you want to be a year from now, where you want to be 5 years from now. If 1 year and 5 years from now, you're building a business, well, then augment your business plan. If 1 year or 5 years from now means sitting on a beach in Hawaii, then you better start planning an exit strategy. If you must ask yourself those questions periodically, and I keep saying it, be hard on yourself. Be hard on yourself when you do these. And as Bob said, seek someone else out, because what you think is hard on yourself might be really soft. So, thank everyone for coming today. Thank you all for spending time with us. Audience, thank you for showing up and listening. And we will be putting this up on totalfood.com/VBS/ and you can see us on YouTube. We will be back in 2 weeks, so we hope to see you again. And in the meantime, if there's any other thing we have to say, panel? Okay. In the meantime, only have 2 things to say. Stay positive, test negative.